Hey guys, Mike here. So, this is it. The video the whole year has been building up to. My top 10 best movies of 2020. And I gotta say, even with not seeing that many new movies because of the cinemas being closed, I did manage to see quite a lot of good films. And I would say that normally I do kind of struggle to figure out what my top 10 movies would be, plus with a couple of honorable mentions. But this year it was a lot easier, what with, obviously less movies coming out. So before I get started, I want to go over a couple of things. First of all, I do go by UK release date, so there may be some movies on this list which did come out last year, but as they came out in the UK this year, they are eligible for this list. Also, do keep in mind, this list of movies is my opinion. Don't take it as gospel. If you have your own opinions, that's great. And I'm not even going to go out there and say that all of these movies are perfect. These are just the ones that I got the most enjoyment out of this year. So that's why they've made this list. So, with all that out of the way, let's get started on my top 10 best movies of 2020. Number 10. So, kicking off my list, we have a movie that, when I was going into it, I literally knew nothing about it. All I knew was the title and the lead. Nothing else. So I went into this one with not many expectations for it. And within the first 10 minutes, I wasn't really feeling like this movie was going anywhere. But then it happened. The premise of the movie unleashed itself. And from that point on, I was hooked. The movie I'm talking about is The Old Guard. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect from this one. I thought they called themselves The Old Guard because they've been doing their job for a number of years and they feel like that they're at the top of their field. I had no idea that it was going to turn out that they were immortals. Honestly, the scene at the start where they get gunned down by like 20 people and then get back up and slaughter everyone in the room got me hooked immediately. I like the characters from this film, the action was really good, and I really like the premise and how they actually used it throughout the whole movie. Because even though the narrative structure isn't exactly the most original thing that's out there, the fact that the movie actually integrates its concepts seamlessly within the story is worth some merit. And with how this movie ends, I am really looking forward to the sequel. Number 9. Often at times, as people, one of the hardest things we have to do in life is learning to forgive someone. And it's even more difficult when it's someone you love. That is one of the core themes of A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Honestly, this film was just so moving. I mean, I didn't grow up watching Mr. Rogers, but even just within this film, you could just feel the impact that this guy had on people's lives. And Tom Hanks plays this character brilliantly. He's pretty much up to his usual standard of excellence. But honestly, someone who I don't think got enough love was Matthew Rhys in this movie. The story was about his journey, about him overcoming his burdens in life, and how he learns forgiveness and how to open himself up more. Honestly, this is such a great story about the human spirit and how sometimes we just need to talk through our feelings. Just a wonderful movie which I'm so glad that I saw. Number 8. Video game movies in the recent years have not really seen a lot of love, and rightly so, because most video game movies that are released are just god-awful, or just don't really grasp what made the game so great. However, you get the odd couple of gems which manage to be good video game movies, and not only that, just be good movies in general. So that's why next on my list is Sonic the Hedgehog. I gotta admit that when I first saw this movie was announced, and we saw the monstrosity that was put before our eyes when they tried to pass whatever it was as Sonic the Hedgehog. Obviously, like most people, I was just like, nope, don't want to see that movie. But then the fact that they actually delayed the release of this movie just to actually work on the character design to make it better for the fans was nothing short of admirable. Now, I have no idea whether this was the initial plan the whole time, whether they actually intentionally released this bad design just so people would hate it so they could take it back and make a better one. I have no idea whether that was the case, but in any case, forgetting all of that, the movie itself was so enjoyable. Ben Schwartz as Sonic the Hedgehog was perfect. He captured all of the same energy, feeling, emotion that you would really attribute to Sonic the Hedgehog. At its heart, this is a good buddy journey, and it definitely delivers on that. Now, someone could argue that this story isn't really anything close to the video games, but realistically, in the games, you just see Sonic run from one edge of the screen to the other to beat Eggman over and over again. I don't think that would make a very compelling story, so they gotta pad it out a bit. So as a whole, the effects, the cast, the energy, the comedy, all of these things were done fantastically in this movie, and as a whole made a great video game movie. Number 7. This next movie I saw under a week ago, and it already managed to nab a spot in my top 10 list. That movie is Soul. I wasn't really worried about this movie because I know Pixar delivers 9 times out of 10, and Soul definitely delivers. This is such a great story about achieving goals, passion, and just as a whole enjoying life. And Soul manages to do that with a fantastic story, gorgeous animation, and some bizarre and fantastical concepts. And like I said in my review, Pixar always manages to definitely stick the landing with their endings. And the ending of Soul is no exception. It's easily the thing that really makes this film stand out. And as well, it delivers an ending which you don't really see that often. And that was definitely very appreciated. Number 6. Now, as you may know, Pixar did release 2 movies this year. The second one being Soul, but the first one being Onward. Now, I can understand someone arguing that Soul is better than Onward, because in a lot of ways, I do think it's a lot stronger. However, having said that though, I did get a lot more out of Onward, because I love things filled with dragons, elves, magic, and a sense of wonder, and Onward delivers on all of those things. Tom Holland and Chris Pratt have such great chemistry together, and it's very easy to see why they chose them for this movie. Their journey is satisfying, heartfelt, and it's just so earned as well. And as well, like Soul and all the other Pixar movies, the ending is fantastic. And as well, I didn't really see this specific ending coming. It was definitely a very nice surprise, and as well, something you don't really see that often. Because for the longest time, Onward seems like it's going in one direction, then all of a sudden, it kind of flips the script a little bit, and just gives you a slight bit of a different ending. And it shines a light on a subject which most people probably wouldn't necessarily consider. Ultimately, the one word that I would use to describe Onward is magical. Number 5. Every so often you get those seemingly average action movies that you only want to sit through because it's got an actor in it who you like. So, you know, I'm sitting there watching this movie thinking, alright, this might be okay. I might get a couple of laughs at how cheesy or lame this movie's gonna be. But then, as it turns out, it ends up being one of the best action movies of the year. That movie is Extraction. I do get some of the criticisms of this movie, the fact that the plot is a little bit weak, which I'm not going to deny. The plot is definitely one of the weaker points of this movie. But to be honest, I wouldn't go so far as to say the plot of this movie is bad. It's just very A to B. The movie knows what it needs to do, and it does it. The places in where this movie excels, though, is in its action. My god, this movie could give John Wick a run for its money. Chris Hemsworth shows what a great action star he is. Every single action scene in this movie is just phenomenal. It's clear cut, it's exciting, it's brilliantly filmed. Just everything you could ask for in an action movie. And this movie is such a breath of fresh air. After suffering through years of just shaky cam crap, it is just so refreshing to see something that you can, well, basically just see. Chris Hemsworth is fantastic in this role. The movie is very rewatchable. And at the end of the day, that's all you can really ask for. I went into this movie wanting good action, and I got that tenfold. Number 4. Now, balancing a franchise is a delicate act. Sometimes you can have too many movies, sometimes you can have too few movies, and sometimes you can just bring a franchise back which hasn't had a movie added to it for 17 years, and that can be a terrible idea. However, that was definitely not the case for Bad Boys for Life. Now again, gotta be honest, the only reason I watched the other 2 Bad Boy movies was so I could see this one, because before watching this new one, I hadn't seen them before. And as a whole, I really liked them. Martin Lawrence and Will Smith have fantastic chemistry, the action's entertaining, the story's usually average at best and definitely relies on the chemistry between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. And I gotta say, Bad Boys for Life is no exception. Though I do feel out of the 3 movies, this one definitely has the strongest narrative. Because to me, this is the first one where it actually feels personal to the heroes. Honestly, I could have let everything else in this film slip by. If the action wasn't really that good, fine. If the plot wasn't that good, fine. All you really need from a good Bad Boys movie is the relationship between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, and they definitely deliver on that. It feels like no time has passed at all. These guys are still fantastic together. They work well in comedic scenes, they work brilliantly in dramatic scenes, and they play off each other so well in the action scenes as well. But sometimes all 3 things are happening at once, and they manage to sell all of them equally. But as well, like I said, I could have forgiven the movie if the action wasn't really all that good. But again, that was not the case. The action in this movie was fantastic. You could see everything that was going on. It was entertaining. It knew when to be serious, and it knew when to be funny as well. For me, the action was definitely the most surprising part about the film. I did not expect it to be as good as it was. And even though I don't think they should, I would still look forward to another Bad Boys movie. Though personally, I would just say, quit while you're ahead. You've released 3 good movies, don't go flying too close to the sun. But in any case, I would still see it if they made it. Number 3. There aren't that many people out there who can make great British mobster movies, but we all know who the king of the British gangster movie is, and that is Guy Ritchie. I can't say that I've seen all of his movies, but to be honest, after seeing King Arthur, I started to really lose faith in this guy. But then he brought it back with The Gentleman. Really, I didn't expect that much from this film. The most I was expecting from it was to be quite funny. But again, another shock, this film is hilarious. Everyone has such great comedic chops in this film. The most surprising one for me was Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant for me is an actor who I never really follow, but the odd few things I have seen him in, he's usually definitely one of the weaker parts of it. Not to say that he's a terrible actor, he's just not someone who I particularly like all that much as an actor. However, The Gentleman completely changed that for me. He is one of the best parts about this film. But to be honest though, he was definitely up against some stiff competition because everyone else in this movie just absolutely brings their A game. And for a lot of people, for me, these are the best performances they've ever given. Like I've said, Hugh Grant, but for me also, I think this is definitely one of Colin Farrell's best performances. I think for me, my favourite performance of Colin Farrell will always be in Bruges, but his role in The Gentleman is easily a close second. His first scene inside the chip shop, my god, I was in stitches, even the second time that I watched this film. But not only is this a very funny movie, the story itself is fantastic. It's brilliantly paced, it makes every character feel important, and as well, it constantly keeps you guessing. There are just so many times in this movie where the power dynamic constantly shifts around to the point where you really don't know who's going to be on top in the next scene. So as a whole, The Gentleman is a fantastic gangster movie and easily one of Guy Ritchie's best movies. Number 2. This was another film which, when I went into it, I didn't really expect that much from it. I thought that I was going to be able to kill an hour or two before a movie that I really wanted to see. But my god, this film was ridiculously surprising. That being The Invisible Man. Honestly, like I said, I didn't expect much from this one, but it delivered in so many ways and gave me so much more that I never expected this film to give. Elizabeth Moss is great in this film. Definitely one of the driving forces of the story. The journey and the character growth that she goes through is nothing short of amazing. It sheds a light on a subject matter which is definitely worth telling, and it does it in such a compelling and interesting way. And as well, I love the subversion of genres within The Invisible Man as well, because when I was watching this, I thought that I was going to be watching a bit of a fantasy horror, and it was going to be more kind of magical and spiritual more than anything else. But then as the story progresses, it comes across more as a sci-fi, which I would definitely classify this movie as. And in doing that, it makes the story a lot more grounded and more interesting as well, because it adds a sense of realism to the story, which makes it honestly a bit more scary as well. And with what little action is in this movie, it is fantastically filmed. You can see everything that's going on. And this is made possible by Leigh Whannell, who is quickly becoming one of my favourite creatives. Because a couple of years ago, he made one of my favourite movies of 2018, Upgrade. And basically, if you haven't seen Upgrade, go watch that movie now. And then once you finish that, watch The Invisible Man. So guys, just before I get to my number 1 pick of 2020, I want to go over some honourable mentions. Here they are.
Where is everybody?
They're wanting everybody to quarantine so they don't spread this virus.
Could I stay in your home?
I hope quarantine never ends.
There are 2 paths you can take, Enola. Yours, or the path others choose for you.
It is time to find my mother.
The game is afoot.
You the lawyer?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for driving all the way out here. Most lawyers barely make time to call.
I can't believe you talked to all my people and say you're gonna fight for me. I did. It mean a lot.
You really got me going. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing.
You all alone? Me too. You don't have to talk about it. You wanna come with me?
Officially, Fire Saga will be representing Iceland at Eurovision this year.
I hate them.
Absolutely terrible. They're old, disgusting people. But we have no choice.
So we're in. Yep.
Number 1. Here it is, guys, the movie that the whole list has been building up to. And honestly, I would say that I'm not really surprised that this movie ended up being my favourite movie of the year. The only reason I would say I'm a bit surprised is because it's not actually a Marvel movie. Because pretty much every year that I've been doing these lists, a Marvel movie has ended up being at the top of my list. You can call me a Marvel fanboy, but I don't care, I love those movies. But I would say that even if Black Widow and The Eternals ended up being released this year, I would have found it really hard not putting this movie at number one. My number one movie of 2020 is 1917. My god, what a fantastic film. I knew going into it that this film was going to be good, but I just had no idea how I'd be just blown away by it. I would say one of the key factors as to why 1917 stands out is the fact that it is a simulated single-shot production. By which I mean it's made to look like the whole movie is done in one single take, which obviously it isn't, and you can definitely tell most of the time where the cuts have been put in. But for the most part, and definitely in the first time you watch it, you don't notice as many as you do the second time around because you're just so engrossed in the story. The two leads are fantastic together. Though they're not the most layered of characters, they are definitely one of the driving forces of the story, and they deliver on some great emotional chops. And I would say leaning into more of the emotional side of this story is probably one of the reasons why I picked this movie as my favourite. Because before making my list, I wanted to rewatch all of the movies that I was considering for my top 10 list. The only one I didn't end up rewatching was Soul, but it's still fresh enough in my head that I was happy to put it in this list. Only a few of these movies gave me the same feelings I had the first time I watched them. The Gentleman and Bad Boys for Life were almost as funny as they were the first time I watched them. In some instances, I think they were actually funnier the first time I watched it. Extraction's action was still as intense as it was the first time around, and The Invisible Man, for the most part, still delivered on the same level of suspense as it did the first time around. But I gotta be honest, 1917 still managed to capture all of the same emotions that I felt the first time I watched it. Because when I first watched it, I absolutely cried my eyes out. I'm not ashamed to admit that. And the second time I watched it, I ended up crying my eyes out again. This is such an outstanding story, which, for me, I really feel should have won Best Picture at the Oscars. I'm happy for Parasite. I do feel like it deserved to win. But in my personal opinion, I just really loved 1917. It is one of the best cinematic experiences that I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't know, probably down the line, I'll end up watching this movie a third or maybe even a fourth time. And I have a strong feeling that I'll be able to capture the same emotions that I did in both of my viewings. Okay guys, that's it. That's my list of the top 10 best movies of 2020. I would love to hear your thoughts on whether you actually agree with me, but also I would like to hear what your favourite movie of the year was. Just remember, like I said, this list is my opinion. You guys have obviously got your own opinions, and this is my opinion for the best movies of the year. Now obviously as a whole, I didn't end up seeing that many movies this year, mainly due to the fact that the cinemas were closed. And as well, I spent a lot of my time watching older movies. Honestly, I just hope that in the next couple of months, we get to go back to the cinemas. Because even though I have enjoyed watching movies in the comfort of my home, I just really looked forward to my visits to the cinema. And as well, with the way things are going, it does seem unlikely that the cinemas will be back in any time soon. So I just wish nothing but the best of luck to everyone who works at a cinema or is involved within the cinema industry. And as well, I just hope that 2021 is just a better year for everyone. And as well, let's hope we can still get more fantastic movies like we've had this year. So that's it guys, that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I've been Michael. See ya!